I'd like to call this July 22nd, 2013 Board of Education regular meeting to order. Roll call.
Mrs. Bissinger.
Here.
Mr. Fruman. Mrs. Hubner.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Dr. Heiss.
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming. We do have four emergency exits in this room. We have 3 to your right and 1 up here to my right, up front. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mrs. Bissinger.
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Dr. Heiss.
Yes. We will have a consent agenda from 8.1 to 12.2. Approval of minutes?
Move that we approve the policy committee meeting minutes from June 17th.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger.
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner.
Yes.
Dr. Heiss.
Yes. Approval for minutes for the previous regular meeting on June 24th.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger.
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner.
Yes.
Dr. Heiss.
Yes. Next up, correspondence.
Dr. Heiss and Board, I have just one piece of correspondence I'd like to share with you this evening. And this piece of correspondence comes from ArtsWave. ArtsWave, as you know, is basically an organization of Greater Cincinnati that supports the arts across the county. And we benefit as a school district from that quite a lot, from the services that they help provide to the schools, as well as even just taking field trips and those types of things, so the arts. The reason for the correspondence is basically it was just a very gracious thank you letter. This year, as far as fundraising goes, we decided as a district to primarily, although many of our different buildings support all different types of charities and throughout the community and in their buildings, but as a district we were going to focus on 2. And one was ArtsWave because of the benefits they provide the district. And then the second one was the Forest Hills Foundation. So ArtsWave sent us a letter saying thank you for participating with their campaign this year, and I'm hoping, of course, that we'll support them next year as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next procedures for public commentary. We do welcome public commentary during our meeting. This is not a public meeting, though, but a meeting held in public. We do ask, I see one will come up here, that but we do want to remind people that this does not, during public participation, does not allow discussion of specific personnel in the district. Next up, again, a high point in every meeting, we have a commendation for the Turpin High Class of 2013 valedictorian.
We do, and I'm going to ask Allison Cardone to join me up here. Typically, obviously, we do not recognize our valedictorians here in a board meeting, but rather at graduation and at senior awards night and those kinds of things. But every now and again, we have a student who surpasses another student in the end of the race. Oh. And this actually happened for Allison, who's an outstanding student, and you've met her numerous times because she was a National Merit finalist as well. So we did want to offer Allison some public recognition for obviously a supreme accomplishment. We do have a lovely trophy for her, which will go on a shelf with many others. She is attending Penn State University in the fall, and she's been accepted into the medical program. So she'll go right from her Bachelor of Science degree through the medical program in 7 years. So quite an impressive young lady, captain of the track team, and the whole time also held a job. So our teenagers can hold jobs and do school as well. Prime example right here. And the Gardones, her parents, are here with us tonight, and again, obviously, have done an outstanding job in raising Allie. So I did want to take this time to recognize her.
Where are her parents?
Her parents are, Dad's standing. Come on, Mom. There she is. So I do recommend that the board obviously recognize Allison as the valedictorian of the class of 2013 for Turpin High School.
I move that we recognize Allison as the valedictorian of Turpin High School for 2013. Second.
It's
Pepper?
Mrs. Bissinger.
Yes.
Mrs. Huebner.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Dr. Heiss.
Yes.
You get to go around. Shake hands. You know how that goes.
Yes, what are they doing? We're standing up. Let me get the picture. Yep, and this is your chance to leave. Okay, next up, public commentary. First card is from John Concannon. Yep.
Turn it. I know I'm supposed to direct my comments to the board.
You're good.
All right, good. Good evening. I'm John Concannon. I'm an attorney. I've been a school lawyer for 30 years plus. Excuse my voice tonight. And I'm also a professor of school law, educational administration, and school personnel at Xavier University. I'm here tonight, as I filled out on my card. I understand I'm not supposed to speak about individuals, and I will avoid doing that. Although I would invite you to have me in executive session if you'd like to do that privately. That invitation is open to you. I hope and I believe we all have a high standard for coaches in this district, as we should in every district. As a matter of fact, I read a letter from HR Director Carnahan that said the classroom standard also applies to coaches. So I think we have to keep that in mind. There are a lot of coaches available. We all know, for the most part, it's not a high-paying job. It's something that people get supplemental contracts for, and I'm looking at a bunch of teachers that I'm sure will agree that it's not a high-paying job. But there are a lot of such people available. I know that student athletes don't get to pick coaches. It's not a popularity contest. But they are your customers. And I think we all listen to our customers when they tell us what they want and what they don't want. And I'm asking you to listen to your customers. You don't have any obligation to any of these people on your agenda tonight for hiring. They've been nominated by the superintendent. It's a vote by the board. You have absolutely no responsibility toward any of these people. I mentioned on my card that I wanted to talk about the merits of not giving a contract versus giving one and terminating it later. I'd suggest you use your money wisely. I know the district, like all of them, are cash-strapped, and do that. So I just would remind you of the strong responsibility you have toward your student athletes. I know that's why you're all here. I have a lot of respect for folks that do this. I've been around board members enough to know that they make less per hour than coaches. So I appreciate that, but I would ask that, and I volunteer again to come into executive session if you'd like to speak more specifically. Hopefully you all have received a rather somewhat lengthy binder from me that would take a lot more than 5 minutes to read, if I could anyway. And I just would suggest you listen to your student athletes and you consider the things I've written. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Any questions? I saw in your rules that you can ask questions.
We're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, Rich Newman.
Thank you, Forrest. I didn't think I was going to follow a particular theme tonight, but it's the first time in 12 years as a board member and several others where I've seen an attorney approach the board, so interesting. I thought the Board of Education might appreciate my bringing to its attention the recent honor bestowed upon a former Forest Hills School District teacher and coach. On June 22nd, in a ceremony at the Easton Town Center Hilton in Columbus, former Anderson High School football coach Vince Soriano was inducted into the Ohio High School Football Coaches Association Hall of Fame. He is the first Forest Hills and Anderson coach to be so honored. There was a contingent of about 40 of Vince's family and friends in attendance, and it was a special evening to be a part of. While at Anderson, Coach Soriano's teams compiled a one-loss record of 147 wins and 61 losses, with 3 undefeated seasons, 12 conference championships, and appeared in the state playoffs 9 times. Vince is currently serving on Coach Tommy Tuberville's staff at UC, where he is the Director of High School and Player Relations. I encourage the board to consider passing a resolution congratulating Vince on this noteworthy accomplishment at one of its upcoming meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Suggest we consider doing that at a meeting we can have.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's, Randy brought up, bringing that up at a meeting, that we can bring him here. That would be an excellent point. Okay, next up, board discussion. We have a resolution of intent from the OFCC.
Yes, Dr. Heiss, if I might, to start the discussion this evening. Last month in particular, we spent a considerable amount of time talking about the possibility of having the OFCC, which was formerly the Ohio School Facilities Commission, come back into our district and kind of give us an update on the report that we received several years ago. Actually, Rick and I have had numerous conversations with, and Ray as well, as with folks from the OFCC, Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. They've changed their name. And the proper procedure of going about that was actually approving a resolution of intent provided to us from them. After we received that resolution of intent, and it's pretty much a boilerplate resolution that districts have passed throughout the state of Ohio in regards to participating with the OFCC. But after looking at that resolution of intent, and sharing that with the board, I think the board at the last meeting had some, maybe some reservations at the possibility of holding the board and the district to follow through with some particular standards that we might or may not be ready to do at this time. So again, Rick and I contacted the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, and we spoke with their representative from their planning department and told them of our concern, and talked about some possible, minor tweaks of the resolution. And at that point he said, that they're really, because that was a boilerplate resolution from their attorney, that they would rather not make any tweaks. However, as a compromise, I offered a suggestion of, well, could we look at a dual resolution that would more clarify the board's position in regards to working with the OFCC. So what I have then presented with you, or for you this evening, for your consideration, are both resolutions. The resolution of intent, the direct one from the OFCC, and then a second resolution which helps clarify our position. And then if both passed, I would send both of those along to the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission for their consideration. And when I shared this idea with them, they thought that that was a very good idea. Now again, they're also very difficult to get a hold of, as Rick will attest. And I've tried to contact them a couple of different occasions recently to say, this is exactly what we're doing. Here is a copy of our resolution, but I've not been able to do so. But with that said, they are fully aware of what we are about to do, or what we are considering this evening.
And even though the second one essentially negates some of the language in the first one, they will accept them both, right? They wouldn't accept the first one and reject the second one and hold us accountable for some things that we might not really want to do.
I think it clarifies some of the language in the first one. I don't necessarily think it negates it. It's if you read it, the first one by itself, you might think that we as a board would be somehow obligated to accept and act on the recommendations from the OFCC. The second resolution says we're using it, I'm paraphrasing greatly because it's a 2-page resolution. We appreciate what they're doing for us. We will look at what they do, but we have no obligation to use their recommendations.
Yeah, and just further, Julie, that's exactly correct in regards to, by having the information in front of us, it provides the board an opportunity to actually have discussion to decide how to best proceed.
It's another resource, a good resource, an independent resource, a thorough resource. So,
I think for most boards, this is the first step in getting a bunch of money. In our case, we recognize that it's highly unlikely we're going to get any money from them. As a matter of fact, I think we've had this discussion before. We're so far down on the list that we would get a very small amount of money, and there's potential, correct me if I'm wrong, that the money that we would get from them, it would cost us more to comply to get the dollars that we would get from them. It'd be a net, you could argue, a net negative. So I think most other school districts, as a matter of fact, a lot of school districts where you see all these wonderful new buildings that they have, where they've only had to put up pennies on the dollar, and the state foundation funded a significant portion of that. We're not in the same camp as those folks. So they probably had no reason to even consider not moving ahead. But anyway, so as long as we think that we're covered, then I guess we're good to go.
Right, and I mean, I'm assuming, Julie, you've, being the lawyer, language, and it's run by our lawyers several times, that we are not committing to their resolution and can't get out of it. Like, I just worry that, yeah, they're gonna not accept our second resolution, and I don't want Forrest signing as president on their resolution and not accepting our resolution. You know what I
they
mean? Like,
can't
that's-
make us put a bond issue on our ballot with all their suggestions. They can't make us
I
do
know, but
that.
I also don't want that to turn into a legal battle down the road, because they're saying, well, you signed it, you know, you're not following through on your end. So I just want to make sure that people know that we're doing both resolutions together. You know, I don't want them to just see one of the resolutions and not know there's a second resolution.
I spoke with Mr. Fruman, who is also an attorney, and I think he was aligned to this also, so.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
Even in our conversations with the Planning Commission through the OFCC, you know, they agreed wholeheartedly that when districts have signed this resolution, many of the districts choose not to go forward. But my comment to them was, with the way it's written, it kind of obligates you, and but at the same time, they understood that.
Just to clarify, I mean, I think in the past, there was no formality to it. This puts teeth into our board's serious about facilities. Yes, we are. I mean, there wasn't that in the last time, and I think there's a lot of time and money spent, and they want to make sure that it's not just something that's kind of glossed over, and obviously that's not the case. We've talked about it and had multiple discussions, and to echo what Dow said is that every district in Ohio has to pass that resolution. There's not an option to pass any other one, and that's why we pushed the envelope to look at another option, just to, even though they said there's no obligation, we wanted to at least have that.
well, I agree. I think, yeah, I mean, the major concern was that we didn't want to be obligated to something that we don't know what the results of the commission will find. So, and I've talked to them up at OFCC too, and they bend over backwards saying that's not our intent. It is more just to show that we're serious about facilities and that this is going to be a part of what we're doing. It's not just something that we're doing just because it's out there.
These are experts in construction, engineering, architecture, who come in for 3 months and look at every aspect of our district, facilities-wise and demographics as well. So we'll also have our demographics updated as well. It's a good faith resolution. That's why they want it. They want our good faith. So everybody's right.
Need a motion on both of them, or could we?
Well, I think we go one at a time. Resolution 7.1 is actually the resolution of intent directly from the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission.
I move that the board pass the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Tupfer?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
And then resolution 7.2 is a resolution clarifying the board's intent with regards to participating in the school building assistance expedited local partnership program from the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission.
I move the board adopt the resolution of intent.
Second.
Mr. Tupfer?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up for consent, the next 5 items will be up for consent agenda. First is student services. Betsy?
Betsy is not here this evening, it will be down.
All right.
Actually, this is agreement, item 8.1 is an agreement with Altercrest and our school district. Altercrest is a facility of which on occasion we value and we use in regards to specific needs of our students. This is the same resolution that we pass on a yearly basis in regards to our participation with Altercrest.
All right. Next up, we have a second reading in curriculum.
Correct. Again, second reading 9.1 is a second reading for these particular policies. Policy 5136 is a cellular telephone and personal communication device policy. Policy 5515.01 is a safe operation of motorized utility vehicles by students. And actually, the answer to that is there is none. Okay. And then policy 5630.01 is the second reading for the positive behavior intervention and supports and limited use of restraint and seclusion. This is actually a requirement to be in place by the beginning of the school year.
The policy committee did meet, I guess it was last month, and went through all of these. The majority of this is required, with exception of the Gator rule, which we felt was the right one to put in place. And I think that was it, right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. 9.2, honors chemistry and honors percussion fees.
Yes, honors chemistry and honors percussion fees. Basically, this is an addition to the fees that we've already approved, and that is a very modest honors percussion fee and at Anderson and then at Turpin as well, and an honors chemistry fee. Also, along with items, oh no, that is, sorry.
What is still 9.2, is the historical icons.
Yeah, these are
Okay,
numbers.
that is correct. On ours, it's actually, but it's actually 9.3, am I correct,
Okay.
Susan, on yours?
No, the
No, the next
historical
one,
icons.
Right. It doesn't appear for whatever reason on ours, but actually the way it's written is a 9.3 is the historical icons social studies course for the 2013-14 school year. This was a read last month, and we'll be voting on that today. Also, 9.4 is a college and career readiness course for 13 and 14. And moving on, 9.5 is a business course of study to be approved this evening by the Board of Education. They were presented last month, and this is the second look at those and approval.
Mrs. Huebner, did you have a chance?
I read them all, yes, I
Okay.
did. We discussed them a little bit, I think, last month. They're all really neat courses. I think they're, and I mean, I'm assuming that they're filling up fast, the college and career readiness course at both the schools.
Yes.
That just seems like a neat one, that they can have the ACT, SAT, filling out college applications, all of that. It's really neat.
And the historical icons, 9.3, I particularly enjoy in regards to iconic leaders and iconic legends. So I think that'll be a great course.
I know that the community, parents were clamoring for the college and career readiness course, so I think
Right.
that's going to be a great addition.
Yeah.
Okay. No, next up, human resources report. Tammy?
Good evening. The Human Resources report this evening is rather lengthy. However, we will go through it item by item here. Item A, resignations. We do have 7 certified and 1 classified resignation. Item B, salary recommendation. Item C is a change of assignment. Item D is a job description, and you did have an attachment for that. Item E encompasses items F, G, H, I, J, and K. And in here, you're going to see appointments to finish up the 12-13 school year, as well as appointments for the coming school year, the 13-14. If you look in item G, those appointments, we have 2 administrator, 15 certified, and 5 classified staff for the coming 13-14 school year. Moving on to item H, those are special services appointments. I'm on page 4. Item I is where you will find the appointment of our coaches and consultants and advisors. And this is several pages as it goes through building by building. And page 13, item J. We are using high-frequency building subs this year in our secondary buildings, and you see those names there. Item K, substitute personnel, teachers, aides, health aides, nurses, secretaries, custodians, cook, bus drivers. And on the very last page, page 16, you see that the FTE is 768.09, and this is as a result of the reduction in force last month that you approved. The superintendent recommends that the board approve the personnel items as listed.
So moved. Oh, no, that's part of the consent agenda,
Yeah.
sorry.
It gets me every time.
Yeah. It's like
We're
musical
close,
chairs.
we're
It's
close.
like musical chairs.
It is.
Who do you get first?
Okay, next up, business operations, Ray.
The first item is a payment in lieu of transportation. We've attached a resolution for payment in lieu of transportation. We have a student who attends Moeller that, through oversight, was not included in previous resolutions brought, so it's the treasurer recommends the board adopt the payment in lieu of transportation resolution as presented. What school year was that for? It's for this past school year. Okay, all right. Yep.
Okay, next up.
The next is a school speed zone extension. Quite simply, the state of Ohio Department of Transportation has determined that school speed zones can not extend beyond the boundaries where the boundary approaches the road. What we have found is that the county has constricted several of the school speed zones, unbeknownst to us, unbeknownst to Anderson Township. There's a process by which we can appeal that, and that's what we're asking for approval here. Is it a motion to approve the submittal of the application to Ohio Department of Transportation to extend school speed zones at Nagel, Air, and Wilson to those reflected in the resolutions?
So the county did that without the township knowing?
Correct, because they're on county roads. And we just happened to be driving down the road one day and saw that
Noticed that it was
they've
moved
been
up.
moved.
It was moved
The
up.
township
is aligned to this, isn't that what you said?
Yes, we're working cooperatively with them to do so.
And they're under no obligation to let us know that they're changing the school zone signs?
Well, we found out after it was done.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Natural gas contract?
yeah. Next one, the final one is a natural gas contract with Hess Corporation. As with the electricity, we're able to buy our natural gas supply through a third party. We bought it through Hess Corporation for the last several years. Over the course of the last 12 months or so, Indian Hill, Marymount, and Forest Hills, we've tried to align the expiration of our contracts. They expire at the end of October. We took our business as a book out the street, did an RFP, got the results back in early July, and Marymount approved it last week, Indian Hills signing it this week, and with your approval, we'd like to extend the contract we've had with Hess Corporation. We've actually been able to reduce our pricing with them. So it's recommended, the treasurer recommends that the board authorize the signing of the contract with Hess for 2 years beginning November 1st, 2013.
If I might add, Dr. Heisen, board, I'd like to publicly thank Ray Johnson for the work that he's done in these areas over the last couple of 3 years, working collaboratively to really pool our purchasing power with other school districts has been phenomenal, and I think we've presented to the board some of those cost savings that we have. Yes, this is indeed a cost savings to us as a district, no doubt about it, because of the pooling. This particular agreement specifically helped Marymount and Indian Hill more, but that's okay. We still save money as well. So, Ray, thank you for your work you've done in this area.
The, this publication, the Ohio School Boards Association Journal, the lead article this month for June is Shared Services Can Put Districts on the Road to Success. So, we're on the cutting edge. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
The state has been pushing recently those kind of programs, and like it was new, and you guys have been doing this and working on it for quite some time, so again, I appreciate it.
Okay, treasurer report?
We have our permanent appropriations.
Oh, sorry, permanent appropriations.
12.1, Board resolution for the 13-14 permanent appropriations is listed in the agenda. We're asking the board to, again, approve the appropriations at the fund level, which is the legal level of control per the state auditor's office. As always, the total dollar of the fund cannot be changed without board action. The resolution in the agenda details the permanent appropriations for each fund. That total is $83,201,553.38. One point of note, the general fund, obviously the main operating fund, accounts for $72,798,967, which is a little larger than $666,000 less than the FY13 general fund permanent appropriations. So we're asking the board to adopt the resolution that is listed, which details the July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2014 permanent appropriations. And then what we'll do throughout the year is we'll make modifications internally, and if there's any change to those up or down, we would bring this back to the board. Item 12.2 is the treasurer's report. We have, in item A, we have the donations for the month of June, a little over $11,000. Statement of board accounts. All of our board accounts ended the year, which is a good thing since it's a requirement. Ended a year of positive balance. In item C, we have a summary of general fund receipts. And keep in mind that on the revenue side, it's a higher than estimated, but that's the county's estimate. That's not the 5-year forecast estimate. That's their estimate, obviously more conservative than what we have. So that's why that number is 105.09% of their projected revenue when it comes to the main taxing numbers. In item D, we have the expenditures by function. And I recapped this to the board, how obviously much tighter projections there, and I think something that we need moving forward. And the under expenditures of 1.52% is in line with that, and obviously will help us continue to be able to use the projecting tools valuably for future planning. And item E is the general fund expenditures by object. You can kind of see where key expenses happen. In item F, we have the monthly bank reconciliation. G, list of investments. H, the list of outstanding purchase orders at year end. I, the statement of interest earned on investments for the year. J, transfer of funds. It's an annual transfer we make to reimburse the athletic departments for their transportation and needs, as well as the reconditioning of some of the key equipment, obviously the helmets and the concussions. So it's a reimbursement that we make to help them with that expense. In item K, we're asking the board to approve the establishment of a new student activity fund. In item L, we're asking for the approval for the necessary year-end advances that were made in June at year-end due to federal funding delays. In the January organizational meeting, the board approved the authority to do this, but I always think it's important to let you know that's what happened. We will be moving the money back to those three, to the general fund, but we did have 3 federal funds where money was supposed to be here and it wasn't. So we could not end the year in a negative balance, so we advanced those from the general fund, all part of revised code. Item I and M, is a request to the board to again approve Rand Associates as the agent of record for the district's employee benefits for the period of August 1st, 2013 through July 31st, 2014. They remain a critical partner in the administration of our benefits program, and we value their services.
Is it a common occurrence for the state to not send us the money in item L, not in advance ourselves?
I think what we heard happen is that the state's appropriation with the federal government wasn't enough, so they couldn't give it to us. So it was kind of a double level kind of thing. And one comment prior to voting, that I think Randy made comment on this during the legislative report, but the state budget obviously is out, and kind of recap the board on some of the key initiatives that are there. There was as all of our key partnerships, SBA, ASBO, put together, just layers and layers of understanding sessions about the several thousand pages that we're trying to get our arms around. We know some of the high-level stuff, but the devil's a lot of times are in the details. We don't have a funding formula yet. It appears, there's a lot of surface information on that that appear positive, and we want to look through that and get our arms around that to know what the reallys are. And I think from a federal funding standpoint, we have, a little over 6% of our federal funding has been cut, which obviously would be made up through general fund dollars. And I think the other thing to consider in all of that is, if you remember, throughout the entire bond issue discussion is, we had facility needs over here that weren't really anywhere. Well, those need to be somewhere. And I think without a past bond issue, we're in the process now of looking through, and as we said we would, look through and things that we have to do short term we need to do, and they'll be done out of the general fund, and they'll be brought to the board as every bid item would be. But those also impact whatever operating dollars we have just become moved around a little bit. So it's recommended the board approve items, let's say, 8.1 through 12.2 as presented by the whole team.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tepper?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
May I say something before we go on, please?
Sure.
If Mr. Fruman were here to give the Forest Hills Foundation report, he would say that as part of his report that of the donations we got this month, $10,750 was from the Forest Hills Foundation for Education for the Access 24/7 Learning Program, which the Forest Hills Foundation actually helped to initiate monetarily a couple years ago. So, thank you, D. Stone, and thank you, Forest Hills Foundation, from everyone for that. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Actually, it's budget timing.
Yep.
Next up, in Mr. Fruman's absence, I invite Dee Stone, who is the Executive Director of the Forest Hills Foundation for Education, to give a report. By the way, also, Mr. Fruman, I don't think has ever missed a meeting, was involved in some, he's an attorney, was involved in some litigation that he could not get away from, and so he wanted us to know that he wishes he could be here, but he's out of town and can't be here.
Okay.
But
Thank you. Good evening. As you know, I'm the Executive Director of the Forest Hills Foundation for Education. And I just want to remind you all, our mission is to enhance the education of students in the Forest Hills School District by supporting targeted initiatives mutually agreed upon by the foundation and district that are not funded within the district budget. So we work collaboratively with the district, but we are in fact a separate entity. Just trying to give you an overview of what the programs we will be supporting this year. Our program initiatives team, headed by Mickey Gilligan Mills, has been working hard to come up with our programming for next year. I'm just going to run through it quickly. So, program for 2013-14 school year. At the elementary school level, we will continue and expand the Destination Imagination, which is a national program that encourages creative and critical thinking and problem solving. And this is open to all schools and all students. At the middle school level, we will continue our after-school tutoring. That's provided 2 days a week, and there will be bus transportation home, which is something we added last year, and that seems to be a big hit with the students that are choosing to stay after and do the after-school tutoring. At the high schools, we are going to do it a little differently this year. We're going to be hosting some college prep classes. As you heard, the district's going to be doing a college and career readiness course, which we think is fabulous, but that really doesn't do anything for the current seniors. They're not going to sign up for that. They're kind of behind the 8 ball right now. So we're trying to fill in that gap right now. In fact, our first class will be August 7th. We're having a class for seniors that maybe have already taken the ACT and are maybe panicking and want to get that up a couple more points, because we all know a couple extra points can make a big difference. So We're having a class on that August 7th. And then we're going to offer a 3-part class in September that will be for seniors focusing on college applications and essays. It'll be in Sunday evenings in September. We're doing them all in the evenings, not to conflict with Bengals games or anything else. So, and then we're offering a 2-part class for sophomores and juniors during that same time frame, focusing on the PSAT and the readiness strategies for taking the PSAT. And they'll actually take a practice PSAT test. As you heard, the valedictorian at Turpin was a national merit finalist. That's how you get to B1, is by your score on the PSAT test. So that is an important test. And finally, we're going to be offering an evening seminar that will focus mainly on 8th and 9th grade parents and parents and their students, But this is just giving them an overview about all these, kind of what the class is going to be teaching, but a shorter evening session for parents and students, so they can, in 8th and 9th grade, hear that this stuff is important. Don't wait till junior year, because then it's maybe a little too late. So this is the kind of stuff we're stressing this year. Moving on to our alumni engagement team, we have some great upcoming events. Our golf outing, alumni golf outing, if any of you are alumni, is this Saturday, July 27th. And then it's at the Vineyard Golf Course. And then this Saturday evening, we'll have an alumni tent at Greater Anderson Days, so look for that. And we are also pleased to announce we're going to be having an inaugural Distinguished Alumni event. That will be held Saturday, November 2nd at the Anderson Center, and we will be honoring alumni from both Turpin and Anderson. We will be having nomination forms that will be going out in the next few days on that. So for more information on any of these events or questions, you just go to our website, www.fhfe.org, or you can email me at info@fhfe.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to point out that the Foundation's got a lot of things going on, and I would just encourage everybody to support wherever you can. A lot of these things are in their infancy, and so it's really helpful to get people to support these activities. And you said if you're alumni, I think we'll take anybody, even if they're not alumni. If they just support the Forest Hill School District, we'd be happy to have you there. But thank you and all the people on the Foundation board for all the work that's going on, because I know there's a lot going on.
Hey, Dee, I have a quick question. Do you know if the Destination Imagination, is it going to be a team at each school, or will they be combined?
We'll have a team at each school. In fact, we're hoping we have 2 or 3 teams at each school. That's why it's expanding. Okay. And if the more students we get, we're going to try to have a team for each. And that is where we're going to need community volunteers too, because you have to have, adults that will lead those teams. And there's only, the teaching staff only has so many hours. We would love for retired teachers or, parents out there that have an interest in any of these kind of things. We would love their help on that Destination Imagination. It's a great way to get involved with the students and work. They do creative problem solving. A lot of it has to do with the STEM, science and math stuff. So if you have any interest in any of that, we would love your help. So, thanks. Good question.
Yeah, thank you. Next up, the Legislative Liaison Report.
I've given you each a written report. It's titled Legislative Liaison Report for July 22nd. I want to hit just a few of the highlights, if you want to call it that. On June 30th, the governor signed the new 2-year, $62 billion state budget for fiscal 14-15, otherwise known as House Bill 59. The appropriation items become effective immediately, but the non-appropriation items, which there were many, will not become effective for 90 days. The governor did veto 22 items that were in the original bill. I have highlighted in this report some of the key changes that impact education. One of them I want to highlight is that new and replacement levies will no longer qualify for the rollback replacement from the state beginning with the November 2013 election. Taxpayers will pay 100% of the property tax bill. The third page I've given you is a Q&A on that whole rollback. As you may know, historically the state would supplant 10% and 2.5% for the homestead exemption on local levies. That's going away. When it comes to funding from the state, our current governor walked in with an $8 billion deficit. It had to be dealt with. He did it. He talked about doing it without raising taxes. Well, that's true. He did it without raising state taxes. Very admirable. But in reality, a lot of the
costs were pushed down to local entities as well as school districts. We took is it 18% cut the first year and 11% the second year in our state funding, which we have not received. That's still in place. And, things like this is just another example of pushing down to local entities some of the so-called cost savings. It's cost savings to the state, but of course it has to come from somewhere. So that will impact us the next time we go out for a levy. It doesn't impact any of the currently voted millage, so it's a change for the future. There were another number of other changes in here. Another somewhat important one, although we don't deal with our joint vocational school very often, in the legislation, in the budget bill, which is a little unusual, joint vocational school boards will no longer be elected, automatically elected board members. They'll be appointed from the business community. There's a concern about that because now you've got unelected officials, well, they're not, unelected people who are moving forward tax legislation. And so that was an issue. Let's see. Oh, another thing you may have read about is in the bill, the funding formula changed. And it initially looked like we would get a funding increase, possibly in excess of $1 million. However, the reality of that is that's the top line. There are a number of other things that, quite frankly, I haven't actually seen all of them in the budget bill that are going to be expenses to the school district. So we don't really know. We know what the gross is. I think we know what the gross is, but we don't know what the net is. There are a number of things in there that are, again, more costs that are getting pushed down to school districts. So even though the top line formula may make it look like we're getting more money, before we celebrate, we need to see what the net is going to be. It could be negative for all we know with all the unfunded mandates that came down with this bill. Now, I'm not expecting that, but and I don't think you are either, right? Okay. But I think that's also something important to be aware of. There were also state funds supposedly being supplied to replace some of the funds, the federal funds that we're losing because of the sequestration. Based on the way that is going to be given out, I'm not holding my breath that we'll see any of that money. I think it's going to wind up going to schools who have low property wealth and other high Title I school districts. So I mean, I read about that and it sounded like a great thing, but in reality, because what are we losing? We had about 6% cut of federal funds. Okay. So, I mean, I know that's all not very positive, but I think we need to be aware of it and be able to plan based on that.
Andrew, can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
One that in the session that I went to, they mentioned a couple things I thought were worth noting, and one is that in the past, especially during the SF3 days, which is a chunk of years where that was the funding formula, there was always an advantage for higher cost counties, which Hamilton County and Cuyahoga County and Franklin County, and we would get, a cost of doing business factor built into whatever they did with valuations or income. And really, it's a fundamental shift because statewide they're looking at all the counties as the same. And we know the cost to do business in the counties is very different, and the income as well as the valuations of property are very different. And so that's kind of a long-term look. It may not impact us obviously in this 2-year budget, but if that really happens, that's pretty significant when it comes to considering all of the school districts, all 600 of them, as being equal when it comes to the resources that they have at their disposal, if we know is the case. So I think it's important to kind of watch that. And obviously there's a lot of other things when it comes to reporting that we're just trying to get our arms around now, and hopefully we'll be able to report some more out in the next few months.
Hamilton County was the highest cost of doing business county in the state, and we had some incremental funding based on that, which we simply lost.
When things become clearer, could we get updates? Because it seems like there's some amorphous stuff.
Always does when it's coming from the state, yeah. Anything else, Rick, you want to add to that? Because that's, and like I said, there's a whole lot in here, but in the interest of time, I just...
And where that'll roll into, I guess, the next formal time will be, I hope in September, no later than October, to have an updated 5-year forecast. Obviously, that's what drives the bus for us, and I think it's, we're just trying to get our arms around. We know what the front line is. We're just trying to put what other add-ons that we need to account for. We said there's some facility add-ons. We know there's some federal funding makeups, and we know some of the, when we go to our community again, it'll cost more. Now we're just trying to find out what are those other line items that we need to build into our appropriations that you passed that we don't know about yet, that we'll either have to reallocate funds for or increase appropriations for.
Dallas, you've been very involved in this. Anything you want to add? Because I think there's a lot involved here that will impact our school district.
Again, it all comes down to what are the details. There are a couple points you even left off of this in regards to potential funding cost for us. And again, until I know the details, I can't really relay them to the board as well. But you're absolutely correct. Quite simply, over the last several years, is the way that the state is doing business is a huge change to school systems, and some of that is warranted, no doubt about it. But other areas in regards to what is the cost to the district, Rick and I still don't have a handle on. I mean, as he said, we've attended several seminars. We continue. We learn something new every day. In regards, there's going to be new changes in. They've been talking about this and different pieces of legislation for years, but now there's going to be new changes in calamity days and how calamity days of how we would make those up and those types of things, and that could be a cost to the district, as well as a number of other areas that there were some services that had traditionally been provided to us from our county ESC, Educational Service Centers, that are no longer will they be allowed to provide those for us. So in those cases, we have to either do it ourselves, which means additional manpower cost, or we have to do a purchase service for someone else to do that for us. So it's those kinds of things that Randy is speaking of.
One of the things I was disappointed in is there was some work to add more teeth to adding accountability to charter schools, and at the very last minute, that was pulled back out. And I think that's unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. Public schools seem to be judged based on the worst performing schools, yet charter schools seem to be judged based on the best performing. So that's kind of an uneven playing field. But anyway, that's my report.
All right, thank you. The Saga report.
The July meeting was canceled. That was the meeting I was supposed to go to, but because of summertime and attendance, they canceled it. So the next meeting is August 13th, and no one was signed up for it, so I can go to that one. So since I didn't go to July, I'll go to August and report back.
Sounds good.
Executive session. I move that we go into executive session to, number one, the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation or charges or complaints against a public employee, official, licensee, regulated individual, or students, unless the employee, official, licensee, regulated individual, or student requests a public hearing. Number three, conferences with the board's attorney to discuss pending or imminent court action. And number four, to prepare for, conduct, or review collective bargaining strategy.
Second.
Mr. Dever?
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
We need to add
You
to
can't,
it?
you can't do it in the middle of it.
No.
Yeah.
You've got to wait.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
so we'll go through it. Yeah.
Wait.
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
Before we go into executive session, is this in order? We had planned a meeting for Wednesday, which was to talk about facilities. It appears as though Mr. Fruman will not be able to be here with us, and I don't see there's any point in meeting if we can't all be here to work out a discussion on facilities, because that's important to get a consensus. Based on that, I would move that we postpone, I guess that's cancel, our meeting, our special meeting for Wednesday.
Do you need a second?
Yes.
Second?
Is everybody aligned to that? or-
I am
Yeah.
particularly in that we have moved forward with the OFCC study. I'm
go with that.
No,
Yeah,
I'm not,
and Jim's-
I'm not
Jim's-
advocating waiting 90 days until that's
Oh,
done
no.
to meet,
Oh, no.
but I think that's a good first step for us.
Yeah, actually, I would ask Mrs. Monk to try to find the earliest possible date when we can schedule a board meeting if this motion passes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Okay, so we're going to executive session. The next regular board meeting is on August 19th, 2013. We will be going to executive session. We do not anticipate any activity after the meeting, so thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Sorry about that. I'm supposed to do that.